Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
History states that in 1969 NASA officially went to the moon. Okay, and that's been disputed ever since. But modern astronauts seem to have a different opinion of what NASA can and cannot actually achieve in 2016. This documentary is very interesting.
The future of space exploration, the emergence of private space sector and daily life in space. These are among the topics we discuss today with two special guests from International Space Station, Terry Virts, the current ISS commander, and Samantha Cristoforetti, the first Italian female astronaut in space. And what comes after the International Space Station once its mission is over? How do we ensure the presence of humans in space?
Well, that's a great question. The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go, and this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Okay, so hold on a minute. Okay, these modern astronauts who are floating only in Earth's orbit are stating that we're going to build a spacecraft big enough to even have a lander in it and other objects that we can actually take outside of Earth's orbit to other planets like the moon. Haven't we already done this in 1969? Why on earth would we be discussing doing it now? Let's just make sure that's what they said.
Well, that's a great question. The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go, and this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Yeah, so these astronauts from 2016 are admitting that we need to build, or we are building, a spacecraft that's big enough to even hold people, plus the lander stuff, plus anything else we actually need to physically land on the moon or anywhere else, as if we haven't already done that. I mean, I thought that the spacecraft that went up in 1969 was big enough to have people and landers and flags and things. Let's just have a look at this in more detail.
My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. Orion is NASA's next-generation spacecraft. Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. And there's only one way to know if we got it right: fly it in space. For Orion's first flight, no astronauts will be aboard. The spacecraft is loaded with sensors to record and measure all aspects of the flight in every detail.
Okay, so this new Orion spacecraft is sort of like a first to monitor or understand the aspects of what it's like for us humans to actually be in space. Is that the concept of what I'm hearing here? Let's just get this straight.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice. Once up, and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
We must solve these challenges before we send people into space. I already thought we'd solved these problems in '69 in order to send people into space. We've already been through the Van Allen belt, haven't we? I mean, isn't that what NASA's been claiming for the past so many years? Or have I got this? Let's just listen to that again to make sure we understand this.
Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Yeah, that's what I thought. This chap has said that we've got to solve getting through the Van Allen belt before we can send people into these reaches of space. But we've already sent people into these reaches of space, according to NASA. So why have they changed their mind in 2016? Let's just watch more of this, shall we?
It's time to head home. The upper stage of the rocket triggers separation. Orion's jets fire to turn it into the proper position to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. No matter what happens now, we're coming in. 75 miles above Earth, the spacecraft enters the atmosphere. Things happen quickly. We're now traveling more than 20,000 miles per hour. Air particles pushed out of the way heat up. An envelope of hot plasma surrounds the vehicle as it plummets towards Earth. The plasma reaches temperatures of 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, almost twice as hot as molten lava. This may be the most dangerous part of the flight.
Okay, so coming back into entry is probably the most dangerous part of the flight. Well, again, we've already done that. I mean, Neil Armstrong, appeared wonderfully unharmed. Yeah, we've been to the moon and we've been through the radiation, but this is nonsensical. I mean, this young man, presumably working for NASA, must know what's already been achieved, but here are the young astronauts working on something as if we have never achieved it. We're talking about creating a module here where people can go for the very first time in a big enough rocket that can hold landers, that can hold items, that can then go through the Van Allen belt. I mean, this is like a test situation, as if we've never done it before. And the systems on board will monitor without people in. It'll just be an unmanned system that can even monitor if it's even possible to get out there into space. If you just listen to all that again, that's exactly what you'll understand. This is ridiculous. I've never heard anything so ridiculous in my life. Let's listen to the rest of this, shall we, and try and understand this point.
Mission Control is monitoring all the data from the spacecraft, and then we lose communication again. No data can penetrate the plasma. Orion is on its own.
Okay, so coming back into Earth, there's a plasma shield here around the Earth which prevents communication from getting through. So, okay, that's one aspect. But this is apparently so hot that humans would suffer the tense heat. I mean, how are you going to survive something like this? This thing hasn't even got people in because we're so afraid of whether we can survive. That's ridiculous.
Orion is inside a fireball. Onboard systems ignite jets to keep the ship pointed correctly, so the specially constructed heat shield takes the full brunt of the inferno. This is the largest heat shield of its kind ever made.
Okay, so this is the largest heat shield of its kind ever made. In order to protect humans from this intense heat, which means anything before maybe might not have done, could not have done. And the point is, this is CGI because we're even afraid to put people in to test it. This is theory.
Orion's computers command the spacecraft to bank like an airplane, keeping a precise path to the landing site. Even though we've slowed from 20,000 miles per hour to about 300 miles per hour, we're still traveling amazingly fast. We must slow down to safely land in the ocean. Luckily, we have parachutes. Specially designed for Orion, the parachutes help us hit the brakes, but not too quickly.
Okay, So we're talking about specially designed parachutes for Orion, but they're identical to this footage, which is from the 70s, showing how they apparently landed the other modules. I think it's time for confessional, NASA. It's time for confessional. Either you did go or you didn't go. Either now you're doing it or you're redoing it.
One day people will be aboard, so deceleration must happen in stages to keep things comfortable for the crew.
Well, wait a minute. One day people will be aboard, so it needs to be comfortable for the crew. One day? I thought this theory was already tested and people have already been aboard, proving it. What?
The forward bay cover jettisons. 2 drogue chutes deploy and slow the returning spacecraft down to 175 miles per hour. Then, the 3 main parachutes open. Once fully engaged, this canopy would cover an American football field. It takes parachutes this size and strength to slow our descent to 20 miles per hour, and then splashdown. For this first flight, we won't have astronauts inside, but we still have some very precious cargo. The flight data from this mission is stored inside the Orion spacecraft.
Okay, so not only are we trying to summarise whether it's even possible, it seems, we're also saying that the first flight to test this theory, isn't going to have any people on board. The most precious cargo will be computers that will monitor the flight. I mean, that doesn't make sense because we've already got this data and presumably we've already done this once. We've more than once. 69, 70, 71, 72. I mean, I think NASA needs to admit that we haven't been and that this is actually like the first time we're experimenting if we can go.
While our flight might be over, there is still a lot of work to do. Onboard sensors recorded every detail, from launch to flying in space to re-entry to landing. Flight tests are difficult and complex, but they give us confidence that the systems we have designed work under real flight conditions. It's great to be a part of this first space flight for Orion, and we're looking forward to beginning a new chapter in human space exploration.
I think, really, that this video, if we're going to take it seriously, should be taken as a confessional. That, hey guys, Neil Armstrong, was saying something cryptic when he passed the mantle. Let's just look at what Neil Armstrong said, shall we?
We have with us a group of students among America's best. To you, we say, we've only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone.